All right then. So if you so I'm going to be recording this. So if you keep your cameras off, so if you want to stay muted, we're just going to use the Zoom chat feature for any interaction. So if you need to ask any questions, obviously there'll be a chance for questions at the end of it all. But if you wanted to ask any questions throughout, just pop it in the Zoom chat. Obviously the purpose of the workshop, we're going to be looking at doing a nutrition planning and a tracking workshop. So I'm hoping that you all kind of get something from it so you can go away and plan your own kind of nutrition plans and you can make sure that you're tracking it properly as well. Bear with me a second, I've just got the Zoom link I need to send to others. I've not got quite the right one. I'm not the best of stars. Bear with me. Okay, so we're going to be going through how to go about setting your calorie target, how to track it accurately, what physical activity you need to be doing in order to lose weight, and I'm going to be obviously at a Q&A at the end as well. So for those that don't know me or aren't that familiar with what I do, so I'm a registered nutritionist. So I have an MSc in sport nutrition and a postgraduate diploma in applied sport and exercise nutrition. I've got 10 years, 12 years coaching experience, so both as a personal trainer in a commercial gym, but also as a nutritionist. I've also been an author for MyProtein, so if you're wanting to check out any like supplement-based articles or any kind of general nutrition articles in a longer form, go to the MyProtein zone for the articles written by myself. And for the last 5 years, I've been working in a specialist weight management service, so we help hundreds of people lose weight. We support with the GLP-1 medication subscriptions and prepare for bariatric surgery. So anyone that's not familiar with that GLP-1 medication is essentially the weight loss injections, which are all over the news at the minute. So that's probably a conversation for another day, but they obviously do have the uses at times. So the way I kind of work and the way I kind of encourage everybody to work is to think about doing things sustainably. So I work with people to provide sustainable long-term results with evidence-based nutrition and exercise protocols. So when it comes to that long-term health and longevity, there are no quick fixes. Obviously, habit formation and lifestyle change, they don't necessarily happen overnight. It takes a long time to help it embed those things. So successful weight loss relies on nutrition protocols that include the food that you enjoy eating. So if you restrict everything, there's only so long you can stick to that, and obviously putting actions in place that you can stick to on a long-term basis. So the guys on the right there, so the likes of Mark, Nick, Simon, they all use that sustainable approach to get real meaningful long-term results from it. So to go about how to accurately start setting up your calorie target, we kind of need to get an idea of how weight loss works. So for weight loss to occur, you need to be in what's called a calorie deficit, or you might have heard the term negative energy balance. So essentially, what that means is that your body's burning off more energy than you're consuming, hence the negative energy balance. So when we're talking about a calorie deficit, when we're in a calorie deficit, our body is forced to use its stored energy, and that's where weight loss occurs. So if you've ever been in a phase of your life where you've lost weight before, you've been in this calorie deficit. So a good deficit to be aiming for is around about 500 calories to around about 1,000 calories. So that results in a weight loss of around about half a kilo or a kilo to a week. So that's a good sustainable rate of weight loss. And one of the reasons why that is such a good rate is it will help to retain as much lean muscle mass as possible. So in the long term, the more lean muscle mass you can keep hold of as you're dieting, obviously the better that's going to be for things like appetite regulation, for the aesthetics of your physique as well. So if you're looking to lose around half a kilo or kilo to be a deficit around about 500 to 1,000 calories is right. If you just pop a one in the Zoom chat for me, if you're all just following along there, if you've got any questions on that, pop them in there. Okay. Follow along. Okay. Dale. Okay. So to go through what we're talking about here in terms of energy balance then, so the energy intake is pretty simple. It's made up of the food and drink that you're consuming. The way it gets a bit more complicated is your energy expenditure. So this is made up of a combination of your resting metabolic rate, your day-to-day physical activity, and also your exercise. So your resting metabolic rate does make up a large proportion of your overall calorie expenditure. So the first thing that you need to be doing when it comes to setting your calorie target is to find out what this resting metabolic rate is. So to go through that, I'm going to go through two options. The first one is a bit more complicated, it's a bit more time consuming, but I like to go through this because it helps to give people an appreciation for why things like fad diets aren't the way to go, or being really restrictive with your calorie intake. It's not the best thing forward for sustainability. So when we're looking at setting our calorie target, our first thing to do is set this resting metabolic rate. So you might have heard the term basal metabolic rate. It essentially means the same thing. So your resting metabolic rate is the amount of energy your body is burning at rest just to survive. So all your vital organs are using that energy. So you might find different equations to calculate that. So if you were to put into Google like a metabolic or resting metabolic rate calculator, there'll be quite a few that come up. But they're all equations. So the one on the screen you can jot down if you're wanting to do it this way. So basically, you need your age, your height, your weight, and your gender, and you'll get a kind of an idea of what your calorie requirements are as a resting metabolic rate. So the one I typically use, if you ever see it online, is the Mifflin St. Jeor. It tends to be the most accurate I find for when it goes to calculating it. So once you've got your resting metabolic rate, you can then times that by an activity factor. So what we're trying to do here is find out your total energy expenditure. And a good kind of guide is to go between 1.2 and 2.0. So 1.2, you'll be timesing your resting metabolic rate by 1.2 if you do very little or no activity whatsoever. And at the top end, if you're training like twice a day and you're an athlete and you had really big energy requirements, you'd be timesing it by 2. So if we choose an example here of Dave, so his resting metabolic rate, his resting rate would be 1600. If we then times that by 1.6, you'd be looking at about 200,500 calories as his maintenance calorie intake. So finally, to get your overall calorie intake, what you need to be losing weight, we need to deduct the calories that we need for your overall calorie deficit. So like I said before, somewhere between about 500 to 1,000 calorie deficit is what we're looking for. So if you're to do this, for example, there, Dave, who's having 2,560, if you then minus 500, his total calories would be 2,060. And this will result in a loss of around about half a kilo a week. So that's the first method in which you can go about calculating your calories. Now, the second one, and this is much easier to do, is you can just go about multiplying your current weight in kilograms by 23. So for example, Dave, who's 90 kilos, if you times that by 23, his calorie target will be around about 2,070 calories. So I'll probably, if you're doing it today, I'll probably use that first one. I'd like to go for the first one just to give you an idea of what goes into calculating your overall calorie intake or your calorie requirements. Okay, so when it comes to your macros then, so setting these up and how much you need to be having of each, the most important one is your protein. So this is important because, well, for two main reasons. First of all, it's what's going to help you maintain your muscle mass when you're losing weight, but it's also going to help manage your appetite. So when you're losing weight and you're dieting down, obviously you want to make sure that you're maximizing your food and you're not getting too hungry. So the minimum I'd be aiming for is 1.2 grams per kilogram. So in our example here, we've got Dave, who's 90 kilos, to work out his protein requirements. We're timing that by 1.2, and you're getting around about 108 grams of protein a day. So there's 4 calories of energy per gram of protein. So we're timing that by 4, gives us around about 430 calories of protein. For your fats, we're looking for a healthy fat intake between 0.5 and a gram per kilogram. So for this one, we'll be timesing 90 by 1. There's 9 calories per gram of fat, so we're looking at timing that by 9. So that'll come to 810 calories. And then finally, we're looking at calculating the carbohydrate requirements. So this is made up of the remaining calories. So what we need to do is to add the protein and fat calories, gives us 1240, and then we're minusing that from the total calories. So the total calories will be 270 minus 1240, gives us 830. We're dividing that by 4 because there's 4 calories per gram in carbs, which gives us 208 grams of carbs. Are we all following there? Did I go quite quick? If you put a number 2 in the Zoom chat so they all know that you're following there, because that gives us our total nutrition plan. So 2,070 calories, 120 grams of protein, 100 grams of fat, and 170 grams of carbs. So that's quite a good kind of base nutrition plan to be working from. So at 90 kilos, Dave will be losing around about half a kilo a week, eating a good base of protein, a healthy amount of fat, and some decent amount of carbohydrate as well. Okay, so once we've worked out those calories, in order to be losing weight, it all means nothing if we're not actually following that number. So if we're not hitting 2,070 calories a day, we could be eating, say, 2,300, 2,400, and that calorie number isn't, or the number on the scales isn't matching up to that. The chances are that you're probably not eating that amount of calories. So the best way to do that is to make sure that we're tracking accurately. So the top tips I've got for this for making sure that you're tracking your food intake properly would be, first of all, making sure that you're using an app. So there's a couple here that I'd recommend. The first one is MyFitnessPal, so it goes without saying. Has everyone used MyFitnessPal? Just pop a number 3 in the Zoom chat if you've used MyFitnessPal before. I find this probably the simplest one to use, the easiest one. The memory function, especially, is pretty good on MyFitnessPal. The recipes and stuff. You're not a fan of MyFitnessPal, Billy? Have you ever tried NutriCheck? That's quite a good one to do. But quite good with the database. It's a better database than MyFitnessPal. Yeah, either way though, the best way to do it is by using an app because you're getting that immediate feedback of your calorie intake and you can make adjustments as you're going along as well. Uh, I always find it surprising, even for foods that you know inherently probably aren't the best foods for you, when you actually put them through MyFitnessPal or you check the food label, it's quite frightening just how much calories there are in certain things. Uh, the next step for making sure you're tracking properly is making sure you're getting that serving size right. So if you've got some kitchen scales, if you've not already got some of these, I definitely recommend getting some. You can pick them up for around about a tenner. They're really good for measuring foods like your pasta, rice, cereal, making sure that you're getting the right portions of those because it can be really hard to eyeball those foods. And also reading the food labels, making sure that you're sticking to those serving sizes. And then another kind of way that it can go wrong in this is making sure that you're actually putting the right serving size into your app as well. So MyFitnessPal or NutriCheck, make sure you're putting those serving sizes in properly because the calorie difference can be obviously really big if you're using too much. Another tip would be to make sure that your question there, but how much pasta in grams would you recommend in general? So I would look at as a dry weight, looking at around about 75 grams. So dry weight before you cook it, if you put 75 grams on the scales in your pan before you cook it, I'd look at doing that way. Uh, it's probably a bit, or it might be a bit less than you realise sometimes. That 75 grams, it isn't an awful lot. If you're used to having your pasta servings from a restaurant, for example, it'd be much more than that. But yeah, 75 grams is what I'd go for. Uh, so yeah, the next tip then would be making sure that you track in real time. So it can be really easy if you're tracking your nutrition late at night. If you had a long day, you might forget those biscuits that you had at 10 in the morning, or if you had something after your tea that you didn't log at the time and you forget to do it, that can easily account for a few hundred calories and be stopping your progress a little bit. So that'll be another tip. If you're sitting down to eat your meal, try and get it into MyFitnessPal. Or the other way to do it would be try and do it in advance as well, so that you know how much you've got to play with. If you sat down the night before and you're planning your breakfast, for example, you can pop it in there as well. Next one is to make sure that you include everything. So all condiments. So if you're adding mayonnaise, that can be quite a big culprit for adding calories. Ketchup, things like your cooking oils as well. So obviously any olive oil or butter that you add into your cooking, make sure that you've got a decent idea for how much that is. You not necessarily have to weigh those every time. If you're using like a spoon for your tablespoon, you can use the same spoon each time. Or if you're using the same amount of butter, you get an idea for how much it is once you've measured it once or twice. And then finally, make sure that you're using all kind of milks and stuff in your teas and coffee. So with the spray, Billy, yeah, it's a good question. So I probably wouldn't too concerned about that really. If you're using a 1 calorie spray, obviously, as it says on the tin, just make sure that you're not putting like 100 sprays in there. Just a few sprays would be good enough just to make sure the pan's wet and stuff. So yeah, I won't be too worried about the 1 cal spray. The good thing about that 1 cal spray is it does help to regulate the portion size. It can be really easy with a bottle of olive oil just to glug it around the pan, and before you know it, you put an extra 200 calories in your meal. So that 1 cal spray is really good for that, for just measuring that portion size out. So yeah, I won't be too worried about that. Okay, anything as well when it comes to your teas and coffee, sugar, make sure that you're putting those sugars in, like a teaspoon, about 20 calories or something like that. Um, okay. All right, that's pretty much all the tips on tracking. Any questions on tracking food intake at all? No. All right. So the next thing to kind of move on to then is to your physical activity and what physical activity we need to be doing in order to be losing weight. So really, I suppose the best answer for this is that if you're getting your calorie requirements right, it doesn't really matter too much. If you've got those calorie numbers right and you're sticking to them and you're actually tracking them properly, that in itself is going to result in weight loss. Where the physical activity comes in is it's going to help to keep you healthy. There's obviously a lot of physical adaptations that you're going to get from doing your physical activity. So things like your lung function, your heart health, all that stuff's really important when it comes to weight loss. When it comes to doing exercise, where physical activity will contribute to weight loss is by increasing your daily expenditure. So if you're doing a lot of physical activity, it's going to crank up the amount of calories you're burning. It gives you a bit more room to have a bit more food, essentially. So that's where physical activity comes in. What I'd be recommending is making sure you do a minimum of around about 2 to 3 resistance exercise sessions a week. So you don't have to go too extreme with this, but in order to preserve that all important lean muscle mass when you're dieting or when you're trying to lose weight, I'd stick to around about 2 to 3. So ideally, this would be done in the gym with some like easy kit to use. But if not, and you're not got gym membership or you're not at the stage where you want to go to a gym, you can easily get a lot of good resistant exercise done at home. So things like squats with a kettlebell, or like make sure you're doing floor presses and stuff with dumbbells. You just want to try and make sure that you're using big muscle groups. Compound exercises are quite good for that as well. So that's one of the big things with resistance exercise. Obviously, part of the reason for maintaining your lean muscle mass when you're losing weight is that it's going to make you look better when you as you're dieting, you're going to look like you're holding more muscle, which is going to look better. But it's also really good for the health benefits and the long term aspects of keeping your lean muscle mass. So there is really good data out there which shows that the more strength you have and the more lean muscle mass you have as you're getting older, the better like longevity, the longer you're going to live basically, and the better quality of life you're going to have. So I would really emphasize the need to maintain muscle mass when you're losing weight, and resistant exercise alongside your protein intake are two of the biggest things you can be doing to maintaining that. The other thing to be conscious of is not going to too much of an extreme deficit. If you go into like 1500 calorie deficit, even if you're eating enough protein or you're doing training, you're probably going to lose a fair bit of muscle mass as well. And then the second thing, really, when it comes to weight loss with the physical activity, is making sure you're getting some form of like cardio exercise in there. So whether that's at the kind of top end of like running, or maybe something just as simple as doing a brisk walk. It kind of depends on where you're at with your current fitness and your physical activity level and where you are. Just something as simple as aiming for around about 8,000 steps a day is going to be a good thing when it comes to purely weight loss. So to do that, I try and walk whenever you possibly can. Aim for around about 20 minutes walking a day if possible. But yeah, tracking your step count is obviously a big thing to be looking for there. Uh, does anyone have any questions there around physical activity for weight loss at all? Good. So can you just focus on the food part of it? Yeah, you can do. You get good results from that. Obviously, the best thing to do would be to try and incorporate a little bit of physical activity, but you would absolutely get really good results by just working on nutrition. Uh, Obviously, like I said before, is that there's the health benefits to doing your physical activity and your resistant exercise, but the most important thing is that calorie deficit. I mean, if you're doing physical activity and you're burning more energy, it gives you a bit more room to enjoy more food that you like eating. But no, the biggest thing is the deficit. Yeah, if you're struggling to do both, the number one priority absolutely has to be on the nutrition and making sure you're getting that right. That's the biggest thing you can be doing to shift that energy balance, is reducing that food in. The only thing really is if you can get a bit miserable if you're just constantly dieting all the time. So the plus side of doing that physical activity, it does give you a bit more room with it, really. Okay, so that's pretty much the end of everything there. So thank you all very much for joining. I have got a really special offer for everybody that has joined tonight's call. So for the next, or to the end of this week, I'm going to be offering 30% off my summer program. So that's a 6 week program that helps to put all this kind of stuff into practice. So I'll work out your calories for you, do your nutrition plan for you, and obviously help keep you accountable. So that'll be kickstarting on the 12th of May. So you've got plenty of time there to think about that. But for the next or to the end of this week, there's going to be 30% off for everyone on this call. After that, I've not promoted it yet, but it's going to be going out to the obviously Instagram followers at an early bird price of 20% after this week. But for this week only, for you on the call, it's going to be 30%. So obviously your options after this call, obviously the first one is obviously you don't do anything. The second one is that you try this on your own, and the third one is obviously if you want to book a call, we could go through what you're currently struggling with, what your goals are, and we can look at putting something into practice for you. Um, all right, cheers, Josie. Thanks so much for joining. Uh, yeah, so does anyone have any questions at all? So, whether you've got a question, and so what does a nutrition plan look like for me as I went before? Yeah, so a nutrition plan for me, what it looks like, basically, it's a lot of it is directed by you. So I try and, as a nutritionist, kind of meet you in the middle. So I try and look at what you're currently eating, the things that you enjoy eating, what you kind of want to make sure that or want to try and eat going forward. And we try and find ways in which we can tweak it so that you're eating pretty similar foods to what you're currently eating or what you enjoy eating, but that it matches up to that all important calorie number. So I often find that we can make quite big changes to what you're currently eating by making modifications to the portion sizes, making tweaks to the way you're cooking foods, and just small issues. So, for example, if you're having pasta bolognese, the calorie intake of that is very different if you're having 75 grams of pasta or 150, 200 grams of pasta. So it's about trying to find what's working for that person already, but modifying it so it fits that energy balance. Does that make sense, brother? Okay, okay. All right, then, guys. So has anyone got any questions at all around the nutrition related or physical activity related? No. All right. Well, thank you again for joining. Like I say, if you mess with the word offer on Instagram, my Instagram page, Liam Agnew Coaching, we can go about arranging a call and get you set up from there. But yeah, thanks again, guys. I'll finish up the meeting. But like I say, obviously my Instagram's there. If you've got any questions going forward or whatnot. Cheers, Joseph. All right. Thanks, Billy. Cheers, guys. Thank you all for joining. Cheers.